Hello, I'm Paul Garner, and it's fair to say that fishing runs through my blood really. All from my life I've been a fisherman, and it sort of really influenced my career as well, my whole life. When I was at school, all I wanted to do was go fishing and be involved with fish, and that led really to a career in academia. I was lucky enough to go to university and study marine biology, and from there I went on and became a doctor of fish behaviour, believe it or not. And I did that for about 10 years, and then was approached by a fishing tackle company to go and work for them and develop products, and that's pretty much what I've been doing, working for fishing tackle companies for the rest of my life, which obviously is a bit of a dream job for me. It allows me to go out fishing a lot, to a lot of brilliant places, get out on the bank and hopefully catch some fish. I don't specialise really in any one species. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades really. I just like catching big fish from challenging venues. That could be big carp from big gravel pits to big barbel from some of the rivers like the Severn and the Trent and the Dove and the Warwickshire Avon. Anything really. I tend to have 6 weeks, 3 to 3 months on each species a year. And every year is a little bit different really. I go work with the seasons and try and catch the best fish at each time of the year. And this time of year, from sort of September onwards, pike are my absolute addiction. And it's these kind of venues, these big reservoirs, that really are the attraction for me, because it's these places that hold the absolute monsters. Well, I've come to Chew Valley Lake today to try and catch one of the monster pike that live in this huge lake. It's a 1,200 acre man-made reservoir, primarily probably best known in the past for its trout fishing. It's a put and take trout fishery, fantastic fly fishing. But over the last 10 years, it's also been open in the spring and the autumn for a few weeks, pike trials, and then the results have just been absolutely incredible. It's probably it is really the best pike fishery in the UK right now. It's an interesting lake. It's 1,200 acres, as I say. It's a big volume of water, but it's not particularly deep. A lot of reservoirs can be anything up to 50, 60, 70 feet deep, and not that rich. Chew's different. Most of the water here is less than 15 feet deep. Massive stocks of coarse fish as well as the trout that are put in, and I'm sure that adds up to growing such big numbers of huge pike. Now, the ultimate goal here is to try and catch one of the 40 pounders that live in here, and at any one time there's probably 1 or 2 of them in this lake, and they are absolutely incredible. I've never actually seen one myself, but I live in hope, and you never know, we'll give it our best shot today. Today might be the lucky day, we'll see. Well, that's just typical, that is. I was just getting the rod sorted out and ready to cast out, and the heavens have opened. But the baits are out now, and we're out fishing, so we can sit back and relax and see what the day brings. So a lot of the tackle that I use for my pike fishing is not really that different from what I'm using for my carp fishing and for other big species really. But the terminal tackle is where it really differs, because obviously pike have got teeth, and that means you've got to use a wire trace. Now there's loads of really good ready-made traces available in your local tackle shop, so if you've never made them before, I would always advise people just go into the shop and buy some that are ready made. And the standard trace really is like the twin treble hook, ideal for dead baiting. This is one I've actually made myself, but again it's virtually identical to what you'd buy off the shelf in a shop. And you might think that's all you need, but what I tend to do is use a second trace. Now this is called an up trace, and it's a little bit longer than that first one, and it's what the lead can run on. And the idea of that is because I'm fishing for the bank, and there's an opportunity for the rig to spin in the air and for the hook trace to tangle up the braid. Now by using an up trace, even if it does tangle, the bait is going to be protected by the wire. So there's absolutely no chance of a pike being able to come anywhere near the mainline braid or the mono and biting it off. So it's a lot safer way to do it. So it's chance of it tangling pretty rare, but just in case, it's a real belt and braces. And then most pike fishing is about low resistance rigs really. You're not trying to create a bolt rig, it's just you want the fish to move off and feel relatively little resistance. To be honest, as long as it's a steady resistance, I don't think the pike mind too much. So all I use is a Nash run rig setup. It's with a buffer bead and then the run ring running on the up trace. And the other thing to bear in mind is that I use quite a small swivel on the bottom of it. So this would generally be then attached to my main line. So if I do snap off, the lead can eject dead easy. It just runs straight off the end of the up trace, so the fish isn't tethered. I'm using quite a big lead, and normally I'll use between 3 and 4 ounces. And then just on this end, I've just put on a safety snap swivel. And so if I need to change the trace, or at the end of the day when I'm packing up, I can simply just attach the trace and detach it, and it's ready to go. So when I'm bank fishing, most of the time I'm using dead baits. On reservoirs like Chew, you have to use dead baits, and they have to be sea fish as well. And that limits your choice of bait a little bit, but the fish don't seem to mind. They do have preferences at different times of year and on different years for some reason, but to be honest, standard mackerel, herring, smelt, those kind of baits, you can't really go wrong with that. But there is a right and a wrong way really to attach them onto the trace. I like baits roughly around 6 inches, 15 centimetres. They're perfect. They're a nice easy size for a pike to pick up without being overly large, and they're also not too heavy as well, so you can cast them quite easily without them overloading your rods and your tackle. And all I tend to do is I just like to, I'm a bit OCD really, but I like to just trim up the tail a bit. Remove that again just because it helps stop tangling. And then with a 2-hook trace, all I do is put the first hook just up from the tail of the bait, like that, turn the hook point round, and then the second hook can literally go anywhere, so it's just tight. There we go. So the trace is tight along the back of the fish, and that's it. If you're fishing at short range, that's fine, that's all you need to do. But again, fishing places like this where the fishing can be quite tough, I may only be getting 1 bite a day if I'm lucky. I want to make sure that when I get a fish, the hooks are in the right position. And the simple way to do that is I get some sea fishing bait thread, just like an elasticated thread, and I just make 5 or 6 turns, there we go, around the hooks. It's a very fine thread, breaks easily, but those turns just help to hold the hooks in position, so there's no chance of them coming loose. And again, use a swivel on the end of the tray, so I could just often make them up in advance to keep them in my cool box, and then if I want to change bait, it's just simply unclip it and then reclip the trace back onto the rig, ready to go. The unhooking gear that you need for big pike is really not a lot different to what you'd use for any other big fish. I tend to bring 2 unhooking mats, H-gun mat, and then I have another thin but high density one underneath, and that just gives a real good amount of padding. And the only other kit that you need, which really is essential, is some unhooking tools. And there's absolutely no excuse for scrimping on these. You've got to have these to safely unhook pike. And one is a pair of 12-inch pliers. Forceps are okay, but pliers are much better because you can just get a really solid grip on the hooks and get them out much easier. And the second tool is a pair of wire cutters. These must be strong enough to be able to cut through the hooks. So if you do with a treble have problems with 2 of the points being hooked into the fish's mouth, you can take one out first, cut the point off so it's not going to get caught again. Only really need it if it's deep, but it's absolutely essential you have them. And that's basically it really. That's the kit you need. Pike might look aggressive, they might look quite prehistoric, but believe me, they're very, very delicate creatures. So get the hooks out as quick as you can, 1 or 2 quick pictures, and get the fish back as quick as possible. Like carp and other fish, nurse them in the margins if you need to, as long as it's safe. Get them back in the water, support them upright until they swim off, and that way they'll live for a long full life and grow bigger to be caught again by other people, make somebody else's day. Well, I've been fishing for a few hours. Bite time the last week or two has been from, it's quite strange, 10 o'clock till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's just after 12 now, and I've had a really nice screaming take and I've hooked what feels like a good pike. It's always a little bit scary playing them on braided line because of the lack of stretch, but these scope rods are awesome, really good. Nice and forgiving. Here it comes. Not a monster. Not a big fish, but it's what we've come for. New Valley pike. Nice double. Well, it's not a monster by Chew standards, but maybe she'll be a monster one day, but they all count. And on quite a tough day, to be fair, it's nice to actually catch a fish, especially in front of the cameras. Not a monster, but a nice one. It came on a mackerel cast, not particularly far out, only about 40 yards. A lot of people here make the mistake of fishing really, really long range, and you don't need to. The biggest feature you've got is the margins. Hopefully she'll grow into another Chew Valley monster in a few years' time. Let me just hold them in the water for a few seconds. Doesn't take them long. Off she goes. Well, I'm chuffed to bits with that, to actually catch one in front of the cameras. Doesn't always happen, but it's nice when it does. That's a great start, and we've still got plenty of time for the rest of the day. Hopefully we might catch a bigger one. Let's get the rods back out. Well, that's great to get a fish on the bank. It's always a great relief. Taking a couple of hours, but bite time at the moment does seem to be a bit later in the day, around sort of midday-ish. Just a little bit unusual, but there we go. So let me get this rod set back up. The gear I use, really, it's the same kit I use for my catfishing, piking, and a lot of my carp fishing. Doesn't vary that much. 10 foot 3.5 pound scope rods, absolutely brilliant. Stepped up to the 3.5s this year from the 3s, and really glad I did, for punching baits out, especially dead baits, which can be quite heavy. Fantastic method feeder work for carp, that kind of stuff. They're just so much more versatile. Really love them. Big pit reels, not really necessary unless you're bait boating out. Sometimes I do that, but most of the fish I catch here are at short range, to be honest. 25 pound Nash bullet braid, brilliant. Best braid I've found for fishing from the bank because it sinks so well. Doesn't need any encouragement, it just sinks on the bottom. very abrasion resistant, superb stuff, but also quite smooth as well. A lot of braids are quite rough, and again, when you're trying to create low resistance rigs, it's all adding to the resistance, whereas with the bullet it works fantastically well. Now what you'll notice is that I'm using drop-off indicators rather than the sort of bobbins you'd use if you were carp fishing, and the reason for this is because I want to create that low resistance free running rig. When a pike takes, if it feels resistance, it can sometimes drop the bait. So if you had a normal bobbin, the line would be tight with a bobbin, but as soon as it comes up and feels the bait run or any resistance, you've got that change in resistance and it might drop the bait. So instead I use a drop-off indicator which just clips on underneath the reel like that, and then I can fish it with an open bow arm because that's creating the tension that holds it on. Now what happens if I get a bite, let's turn my bite alarm on, is 9 times out of 10 it'll pull away from me, but if it doesn't, that will drop back. But if it does take a normal take, it takes the line out the clip, and as you can see, with the Nash alarms, the sirens are so sensitive that even on a slack line they're indicating a run, no problem at all. That's it really, it's dead simple, very low resistance, you get nice positive runs and very few fish dropping the bait. So let's clip this up and see if we can get another one. So I had that little flurry of action, nice little fish on the bank, but that's the beauty of this place. You just never know quite what the next bite's going to bring. In fact, not a million miles away from here, just 100 yards further up the bank, I had a 33 pounder 2 years ago, about this time of year as well. Really big powerful fish that actually tail walked about 60 yards out. But a lot of the time these days I tend to fish tube from the boats just because it allows you to fish more of the lake really, and you can keep more mobile. And I mean, just yesterday I was out and had a 22 pounder and a 16 pounder in the space of 10 minutes just after we'd moved the boat. And in fact my biggest fish from the lake, which was an absolute monster of 37 pound caught in February a couple of years ago, that was a fish of a lifetime really, 37 pound. So you really never know on here. It's such an exciting place to fish. Every time the alarm signals a bite or the float bobs when you're out in the boat, it could be a 40 pounder or a 4 pounder. You just never know, but it's certainly exciting and it keeps me coming back. Well, light's just starting to go now, it's getting pretty late in the day, and the rod I cast quite a bit further out was just ripped off, absolutely ripped off. And I thought I'd missed it to begin with, but tightened down, and there's this one on the end, just, I don't know, about 11 pounds, something like that. Still not a monster, but getting a bit bigger. Well, the light's really starting to fade now, and I think home's calling. I had a couple of nice fish today, no monsters, but you never know, the next bite could be the fish for a lifetime on here. What more can I say? I hope I've inspired you to come out and adapt your carp fishing, make sure you've got the right unhooking gear and just a few accessories, and get out and have a go for some pike this winter. Hope it goes well for you. Have a great winter. Bye for now.